the cabin that followed me. I rented the cabin because I needed quiet. A week alone in the woods, no traffic, no work emails, no neighbors. Just peace. The listing said it was an authentic forest retreat. It didn't mention the way the trees leaned inward, like they were listening, or the way the air felt heavy, thick, as if someone had exhaled and never breathed in again. The cabin itself was small, too small. One room, one window, one door. I remember thinking the wood looked freshly cut, despite the listings saying it was old. Inside, everything smelled of pine sap and something else. Wet soil, maybe. I set my bags down, lit a fire, and tried to relax. But the first night, the cabin made a noise I can't forget. Not creaking, not settling. Shuffling. Like someone walking around the outside, dragging their feet in shallow circles. I almost opened the door to check. Almost. But the footsteps stopped the moment I touched the handle, as if they were waiting. The next morning, the forest felt wrong. The path I had walked the day before, straight and clear, was now curved. Subtle, but unmistakable. The trees weren't where they had been. At least, not all of them. Some stood in new positions, forming a loose half-circle around the cabin, like spectators watching a performance. I told myself it was my imagination. But then, I saw footprints. Not boots, not animal prints, just shallow, smooth impressions. Bare feet. And every footprint was pointing toward the cabin. On the third day, I woke up to a loud thunk. The whole cabin shook. I went outside. The cabin had shifted. That's the only word for it. It now sat slightly tilted, as though it had moved an inch or two while I slept. The ground beneath it was disturbed. Fresh dirt, torn roots, as if the cabin had been dragged. I packed my things. I didn't care if I lost money. I was leaving. But when I reached the trail, there was no trail. Not even a hint of one. Just an unbroken wall of trees, trunks pressed close together like bones in a clenched fist. I ran. Didn't matter which direction, I just ran until my legs shook. But after a few minutes, I saw it again. The cabin, blocking my path. Except, no, not quite the same cabin. This one was missing the window. Just a blank wall of wood where the glass should have been. I walked backwards, slowly, forcing myself not to scream. When I turned to run the opposite way, the cabin was there too. This one had 2 windows, both open, both dark. And from inside one of them, I heard a voice whisper, "Stay inside. You can't leave until we're finished building you." I froze. Building me? Something shuffled behind the walls. Multiple things, moving in frantic, excited patterns. Constructing, dragging, positioning. The trees rustled, and for a moment, I thought wind was blowing through them. But the air was still. The trees were moving on their own, and they were closing in. I don't remember how long I wandered. Hours, days. The forest never changed. Sometimes the cabin appeared dozens of yards away. Sometimes it appeared inches behind me. Each time, it looked a little more like me. Its shape narrowing, its wooden slats bending inward like ribs, the door warping into a contorted impression of a screaming mouth. The whispering grew constant. A cabin must be lived in. A cabin must have a heart. Yours fits. Yesterday, I woke to find wooden splinters embedded in my skin, thin and sharp, like roots trying to take hold. The cabin stands in front of me now, waiting. It has my face carved into its door, my eyes in its windows, my voice echoing from somewhere deep inside its walls. I understand now. The cabin wasn't built. It grows. And tonight, it will finish growing with me. I can hear the things in the walls getting excited. They're knocking. They're calling. They're nearly done. And when they are, I won't be leaving the woods. I'll be them. Another cabin, waiting for the next person who wants peace and quiet.
The mirror never learned my face. The mirror in my bathroom stopped reflecting me last month. Not all at once. At first, it was subtle. I would brush my teeth and notice my reflection blinking half a second too late, smiling after I stopped. I blamed exhaustion. The delay grew. By the second week, my reflection lagged behind my movements entirely. If I raised my hand, it stayed still. If I turned away, it kept watching. Its eyes never blinked now. I avoided the mirror, but I could feel it working, studying, even when my back was turned. Like something memorizing the shape of me. One night, I glanced at the mirror by accident. My reflection wasn't standing where I was. It was closer, pressed against the glass from the inside, breath fogging the surface in slow, uneven bursts. Its mouth moved before mine did. Almost, it whispered. The sound didn't come from the mirror. It came from behind my eyes. The next morning, my reflection moved on its own. It tilted its head, stretched its fingers, practiced my smile, too wide, teeth showing longer than they should. I stepped back. It didn't. The mirror cracked slightly under the pressure of its palms. I covered the mirror with a towel. The towel bulged outward. People started commenting. "You look tired," they said. "You're acting different." My phone began unlocking itself. Messages appeared I hadn't typed. "I'm practicing. Don't worry. I'll be you soon." When I deleted them, they reappeared in the mirror, written in condensation across the glass. Last night, the towel fell. I don't remember it happening. I just remember the sound. A wet, sliding noise, like skin peeling away from glass. I watched myself step out of the mirror. It was taller than me, thinner. Wrong in small ways my brain kept refusing to name. It touched its face, touched mine. "Thank you for standing still," it said gently. "It's easier when you don't fight." I tried to scream. The mirror swallowed the sound. I'm writing this with fingers that don't feel attached to me. The world is flat here, cold. I can see through the glass now. I watch it living my life, calling my friends, sleeping in my bed, laughing with my mouth. It does everything perfectly, better than I ever did. Sometimes it stands in front of the mirror and watches me struggle to move. It presses a hand to the glass, smiles. "Don't worry," it mouths. "I'll remember you." The cracks are sealing. The mirror is getting warmer. I think this is the last time I'll be able to write. Because mirrors don't reflect people. They copy them. And once they're done learning, they don't need the original anymore. The cabin never answered. The cabin didn't have an address, just a hand-painted sign nailed to a tree. Rented. Check in anytime.
That should have been my first warning. There was no path leading to it, no footprints, no tire tracks. Just a narrow clearing where the trees abruptly stopped, as if they refused to go any closer. The cabin sat in the middle, waiting. Inside, everything was dust-free, too clean, like no one had ever lived there or ever left. There was no electricity, no running water, but the lantern on the table was already lit. I didn't light it. That night, the woods were silent, not peaceful, empty. No insects, no wind, no distant animals. The kind of silence that presses against your ears until you start to hear your own thoughts echoing. I slept badly. I woke up sometime after midnight, not to a sound, but to the absence of one. The lantern flame stood perfectly still. Even my breathing sounded wrong, muffled, like it was happening somewhere else. Then came a knock, soft, polite, from the inside of the walls. 3 taps, not at the door. I didn't move. The knocking traveled slowly around the cabin, tapping from different places in the wood, as if something were testing it, learning where it was weakest. Then, a voice whispered from directly behind my head. "We don't knock on doors here." I slept with my back against the fireplace, eyes open until morning. At dawn, I found a second chair at the table. I'm certain there had only been one. The new chair faced the door. Its legs were wet, dark with sap, or something darker. I dragged it outside and left it at the edge of the clearing. When I turned back, it was inside again, closer to the bed this time. Pinned to the wall above the fireplace was a sheet of paper I hadn't seen before, handwritten, neat, patient. Cabin rules. 1. Do not open the door after dark. 2. Do not respond to voices that know your name. 3. If the knocking starts inside the walls, remain still. 4. If you wake up and the cabin feels smaller, it is. I reread the last rule several times. That night, I noticed the walls were closer. The room felt tighter, the ceiling lower. The bed nearly touched the fireplace now. I couldn't remember how big it had been before. Just after sunset, someone spoke from outside the door. A familiar voice. My sister's. "Hey," she said softly. "I'm lost. Can you let me in?" I felt my throat tighten. I hadn't told anyone where I was. The voice sighed. Then something heavy leaned against the door, bowing the wood inward. "Please," it whispered. "It's cold out here, and you already let me in once." I shook my head. The lantern flickered. The knocking started again, harder now, coming from the walls, the floor, the ceiling. The cabin creaked, shrank, breathed. I woke up curled in the corner. The room was barely large enough to sit up in. The door was inches from my knees. The lantern was out. On the inside of the door, carved deep into the wood, were words I didn't remember writing. "Thank you for staying. I don't know how long I've been here. There's no daylight anymore. Just a dim amber glow leaking through the walls like old memory. The knocking has stopped. Now there's only breathing, slow, content, from everywhere. I think the cabin isn't haunted. I think it's occupied. And I think it only feels safe when it knows you're staying forever." We agreed not to talk about Elliot. There were 4 of us when we moved into the old block on Mercer Street. Me, Hannah, Lewis, and Elliot. By the end of the month, There were still 4 names on the lease, but only 3 people. Elliot was the quiet one. Not shy, just contained. He listened more than he spoke, smiled a little too late, laughed without sound. Hannah said he made her uncomfortable. Lewis said, "You're imagining it." I said nothing. The first strange thing happened on a Tuesday night. I came home late and found Elliot sitting at the kitchen table in the dark. "Power's out?" I asked. He looked up slowly. "No," he said. Then the lights flicked on. I laughed. "You're creepy, man." He smiled, but his eyes didn't move. A few nights later, Hannah knocked on my door, wide-eyed, shaking. "He was standing in my room," she whispered. "Elliot?" "Yes, just standing. When I asked what he was doing, he said," she swallowed, "that he was waiting for me to stop noticing him." Lewis dismissed it. Dream, sleep paralysis, stress. But the next day, Elliot didn't come home. His room was untouched. Bed made, phone gone. The landlord said Elliot had moved out early that morning. None of us remembered him packing. That night, Lewis said something strange. "We shouldn't talk about him anymore." Hannah frowned. "What?" Lewis rubbed his temples. "It feels safer if we don't." I don't know why, but we agreed. After that, things shifted. We'd be talking, laughing, and suddenly the room would feel wrong, like a sentence had been interrupted and never finished. Hannah would stop mid-word. Lewis would blink, confused. "Did you hear that?" one of us would ask. Nothing was ever there. Sometimes I caught myself setting out 4 plates. Sometimes Hannah would say, "Elliot would like that," then freeze. Her face would go blank. "I don't know why I said that," she'd whisper. We stopped correcting each other. One night, Lewis checked the security app on his phone. The living room camera had recorded something at 2:12 a.m. The 3 of us sat together, watching. The footage showed us asleep on the couches. Then, movement. Someone stood up from the space between us. A tall shape, faceless on camera. It leaned down toward Hannah's sleeping face and whispered. The audio crackled, but we heard it clearly. "Thank you for forgetting me." The figure turned toward the camera, toward us. Lewis dropped the phone. Hannah started crying. I finally said his name. "Elliot." The lights went out. The next morning, Elliot was back, sitting at the table, drinking coffee. "Morning," he said pleasantly. Hannah screamed. Lewis backed away, shaking his head. No, we agreed." Elliot looked confused. "Agreed what?" I stared at him, at the way his outline seemed incomplete, like parts of him hadn't fully loaded. "You left," I said. "You moved out." Elliot tilted his head. "I never left," he said gently. "You just stopped holding me in place." That night, Elliot explained. He wasn't a person. He was something that required attention to exist fully. Names, conversations, memory. When we stopped talking about him, he thinned. When we forgot, he hollowed. "But I don't want to disappear," he said softly. "So someone else has to." Hannah locked herself in her room. Lewis ran. I stayed. This morning, there are still 4 names on the lease. Hannah's room is empty. No bed, no clothes. Just a faint outline on the wall where someone used to be remembered. Elliot made breakfast. He hums now. He looks more solid. And when I try to think of Hannah's face, my mind slides away, like it was never finished loading. Elliot smiled at me across the table. "Don't worry," he said. "You won't even miss her." And the worst part? He's right.